We're continuing to talk about the cross today and the events around it. And I want to draw your attention today to what they did to Jesus before he was crucified. They started by scourging him. They removed his clothes and laid him over and bound his hands. And then they took a whip with little shards in the end of it and whipped him with it over and over and over. Up until very recently, scourging or whipping or caning was a common form of punishment. Perhaps you've read a book or seen a movie where someone in some ancient land, maybe a sailor on a ship, was whipped or caned. Very often that person doesn't survive, or they lay for weeks in pain from it. Sometimes they're given scars or welts from the ordeal that they bear for the rest of their life. But Roman scourging was far worse than this, because the Roman scourge was done with the infamous cat of nine tails, which was designed to rip the flesh off of a person. They called these Roman scourgings the half-death. Imagine a meek man as Christ receiving such a punishment. Surely you'd look away. Even if you didn't like the man, it would probably bring you to tears and stir up in you some emotion. But that's not what happened to Christ. After he was scourged, he was mocked. They took a wreath made out of thorns and they forced it onto his head. They took a purple robe and they put it on his bloody back. They mocked him and spat on him. They bowed to him in mockery. They took the mock scepter they had put in his hands and they beat him in the head with it. There was no need for this. Jesus didn't resist them. Jesus didn't fight back. Jesus didn't deserve any of this torture. He was headed to the cross. These men had no personal vendetta against Christ. So why'd they do it? They did it because they could. They did it because they wanted to. You want to understand the depths of human depravity? Look at what they did to Christ. Cast next to his perfect innocence, we humans do not stack up so well, do we? I'm reminded of Romans chapter 3 where Paul says, "There's none righteous, no, not one," and then goes on to say, "Their throat is an open sepulcher. With their tongues they've used deceit. The poison of asps is under their lips, whose mouth is full of cursing and bitterness. Their feet are swift to shed blood. Destruction and misery are in their ways, and the way of peace have they not known. There is no fear of God before their eyes." If you doubt this description of humanity, look what they did to Christ. And then think of this. Christ knew it. God knew before Christ ever came just how wicked men could be. And Jesus came not to condemn the world, but that the world through him might be saved. John 3:17. The wicked sin of the men who mocked Jesus, as well as my wicked sin and your wicked sin, and the wicked sin of everyone else was placed on our Lord at the cross. And he did it for you. He did it for me. To wrap this up, let me read John 3:18. It says this, "He that believeth on him is not condemned, but he that believeth not is condemned already, because he hath not believed in the name of the only begotten Son of God." Christ came to bear our sin. If we believe, we're not condemned, but if we refuse to believe, we are condemned. Have you believed on Christ?